You ever wake up one morning in the kind of suburb that looks like it was painted by a real estate brochure and just feel it in your gut? Something's off, like the whole neighborhood is holding its breath before the drama explodes. That's exactly how my nightmare started in Oakwood Ridge Estates, this picture-perfect slice of Texas suburban heaven outside Austin. White picket fences gleaming, lawns so green and uniform you'd swear they were vacuumed every morning, kids riding bikes in synchronized waves, and everyone waving with that plastic smile, like we were all starring in the same wholesome Netflix show. But peel back the curtain and you'd find the HOA running the place like a mini dictatorship. Rules on everything from mailbox angles to how long you could fly an American flag before it became a violation. Sunday potlucks were pure theater, folks chatting over casseroles while whispering about who got the latest fine for unsightly garden gnomes. I was Jack Harlan, 62, retired civil engineer who'd spent decades designing real infrastructure for the Army Corps of Engineers. After my wife Laura passed 5 years back from that brutal cancer fight, I bought this edgelot house on purpose, the one backing right up to the community greenbelt with my little hobby pasture out back. 3 pregnant cows I kept as therapy, a way to stay busy and honor the farm dreams Laura and I never got to chase together. Mornings meant coffee on the porch, dew sparkling on the fence, the cows lowing lazy in the mist. Quiet. Healing. Until Mara Kensington rolled in like a pastel hurricane. Mara was the brand new HOA president, a former realtor with helmet blonde hair that never dared move in the wind, always decked out in those power red blazers and armed with a clipboard she treated like the Holy Grail. I'd seen her once at the community barbecue, flashing that practiced smile while slapping fines on folks for excessive lawn ornamentation. She spotted my open pasture and decided it was public enemy number 1. One crisp dawn I stepped outside with my mug and heard it before I saw it. The growl of diesel engines chewing up dirt. Rounding the barn, my heart dropped like a stone. Right past my fence line sat a massive yellow excavator, buckets swinging red clay like trophies. And there was Mara, arms crossed, looking like she'd just won the neighborhood lottery. "Morning, Mr. Harlan," she chirped, waving like we were old golf buddies. "Lovely little setup you've got here." I stopped cold at the fence, boots sinking in the dew. "What the hell are you doing to my pasture, Mara?" She lifted that clipboard like a shield, all sugar and steel. "Erosion control, Jack. Runoff from your land's been flooding our tennis courts and greenbelt. We're installing a retention berm to manage stormwater. Community first, right?" I blinked, half sure I'd hallucinated. "You're damming my natural drainage without a word to me? That's my property line." "Preventative measure," she cooed, smiling like I was a slow child asking why the sky was blue. "Your open space makes perfect sense for holding water instead of ruining our pristine courts. The cows? They'll adapt." I let out a short laugh. Not funny, just disbelief. "Not without permits and not without talking to the actual landowner. You've got zero right." She tilted her head, that fake sympathy dripping. "If you have concerns, swing by the next board meeting. We're all about open dialogue here in Oakwood Ridge." Then she spun on her heel, climbed into her shiny white SUV, and left the excavator roaring like some mechanical bully. I stood there long after the dust settled, mud sucking at my boots, feeling that deep gut wrongness that doesn't fade with coffee. That night, I pulled out my old topographic maps, FEMA overlays, even fired up the dusty laptop from my core days. The model screamed it. That berm would choke my drainage and turn half my pasture into a swamp. I called the county. No permits on file. Environmental board? Crickets. Mara hadn't just overstepped. She'd sprinted past every law designed to stop exactly this kind of entitled stupidity. The next morning, I walked the line with my phone rolling video. Workers avoided my eyes. Smart contractors hate getting caught in someone else's power trip. By evening, I'd filed 3 formal complaints. Each got the same canned email. Investigation opened. I'd seen enough government paperwork in my life to translate that as file and forget. 3 days later, Mara strutted back, this time dragging Dennis Hale, the HOA treasurer, a Bluetooth earpiece guy who treated spreadsheets like a personality trait. They marched onto my land like it was their personal park. "Your crew's trespassing," I said, voice flat as concrete. Dennis flashed that salesman grin. "No trespassing, Jack. We're improving community drainage. Benefits everyone." Good neighbors ask first. I shot back. Mara folded her arms, red blazer sharp as a knife. It's still HOA adjacent land, technically. And your grass is an eyesore anyway. I leaned in, eyes locked. It's my pasture. Deed, survey, topographic proof say so. You build without notice or permits and think I'll roll over. Cute. They slinked off whispering, but I didn't care. That night, I started my binder. Photos, drone scans, every violation timestamped. Evidence doesn't yell, it waits. But all the proof in the world can't outrun Texas rain. When the first big shower hit, my lower field turned to 6 inches of standing water overnight. The cows shifted nervous, hooves sinking. I grabbed a shovel and carved an emergency trench, back aching, fingers numb, until the flow finally moved. Thought I dodged it. Then 3 days later I found them. 2 calves half submerged, bloated, eyes glazed. The stench hit first. My vet buddy Tom knelt down, shook his head. Fertilizer and pesticide runoff from up the hill got trapped in your basin. Not natural. That's not runoff, I growled. That's entrapment. He nodded slow. Report this to the state environmental board now. I did. But before the state even blinked, the HOA struck back with a thick envelope. 3 violations: excessive odor, unauthorized trenching, livestock waste. $1,000 fine. I laughed so hard the dog hid under the porch. They were drowning me in paperwork after already drowning my land. That same week, a plain brown envelope showed up at my gate. No return address, just a printed memo labeled Stormwater Containment Plan Draft. It laid everything bare. The berm's real purpose was to redirect every drop from the subdivision's roofs and manicured lawns straight into my pasture. Legal exposure minimal. Attached was a screenshot from their private group chat. Mara typing. If the old engineer wants to play hero, let him dig his own grave. Dennis. LOL. Hope the cows don't sue. Mara again. He'll break before the berm does. My blood went ice cold. They knew it was illegal. They knew it would poison my land. And they were laughing about it over coffee and HOA dues. I forwarded the whole packet to the State Water Board and my old colleague Janice Rivera, now a top hydrologist. She called that night, voice tight. Jack, that's not a berm. It's an illegal dam. If it fails under heavy rain, it'll dump half the neighborhood's stormwater straight downhill into the main subdivision. Could it break? Absolutely, I said. And right then I realized Mara's little monument wasn't just a violation. It was a loaded gun pointed at everyone, including her perfect kingdom. The petty harassment kicked into overdrive. Noise complaints because my generator ran during outages. Vehicle violations for my truck being parked too long. They even cited me for unauthorized equipment use when I ran my own pump to save the last cow. I installed trail cams along the fence. One night at 2 a.m., the footage caught a volunteer HOA lackey sneaking with a tape measure, measuring my grass like it was a federal crime. I saved every clip, chuckling dark. Nothing says community spirit like spying on your neighbor's lawn at midnight. Meanwhile, the neighborhood gossip mill spun overtime. At the next potluck, folks who used to borrow my tools now crossed the street. Heard Jack's fighting the HOA again. Always the troublemaker. One Karen clone whispered loud enough for me to hear. I just smiled, raised my iced tea, and said, funny how the real troublemakers hide behind clipboards. The table went quiet. Good. Let them squirm. I kept my head down, patient on the surface, but inside I was building a digital fortress. Every email, every photo, every time-stamped violation. Laura's old photo on my desk watched me work, her smiling in the garden we planted together. We don't back down from bullies, Jack, she used to say. I whispered back to the empty room. I won't, love. Not this time. The storm warning hit the news. Category 3 brewing in the Gulf, tracking straight for us. Mara doubled down. More fines, more letters blaming my obstruction for their delays. I stood on my porch one evening, staring at that ugly concrete scar on the horizon, and thought about every bridge I'd ever built that actually held. Mara's wall wasn't engineering, it was ego with rebar. The first drops came soft, then hammered like accusations. Wind howled through the oaks, and I could hear the berm groaning in the dark, pressure building like a lie about to snap. At 3:17 a.m., the world split. A crack like thunder, then a roar that shook the ground. I ran out, flashlight slicing rain, just in time to watch the wall explode. Concrete chunks flew. A wall of brown water and mud ripped through my pasture and kept rolling, straight downhill into the heart of Oakwood Ridge Estates. Streetlights flickered out one by one. Cars floated like toys. Perfect lawns vanished under sludge. And somewhere in the chaos, I heard a woman screaming for help. By sunrise, the neighborhood was unrecognizable. 20 houses damaged, a dozen condemned, the HOA clubhouse buried under a foot of muck. News choppers circled. Reporters called it a once-in-a-century flood. I called it predictable arrogance. That afternoon, the HOA lawyers sent a letter blaming my emergency trench for destabilizing their structure. I laughed until my ribs hurt, then called Janice. "They're trying to pin it on you," she said, "but our report shows your trench actually saved half the block." They're terrified. The county investigation kicked off fast. But before I could testify, Mara called me. Voice small for the first time, no clipboard bravado. "Jack, I know we've had differences, but families are trapped. Kids, elderly. If you've got any pumps or sandbags," I should have hung up. God knows she earned the silence. But Laura's voice echoed in my head. "Even when they build walls against you, don't let them drown." I sighed. "I'll come." By the time my truck rolled down Ridgeview Drive, the street looked like a war zone. Asphalt cracked, yards torn, mailboxes leaning like drunk soldiers. The air stank of mildew, fertilizer, and regret. My Army Reserve buddies Jonah and Pete jumped out with me. We unloaded sandbags and pumps without a word. Neighbors emerged pale and wide-eyed, the look people get when they realize perfect was just luck wearing makeup. One young mom ran up with 2 kids clinging to her legs. "We thought no one would help," she whispered, voice cracking. "I almost didn't," I told her. She didn't know whether to hug me or cry. We worked like machines, sandbags stacking along collapsed curbs, pumps roaring to push water toward the lower runoff. The same trench Mara had mocked weeks ago was now the only thing saving her precious subdivision from total wipeout. Folks who'd ignored me for months started pitching in, passing bags down the line, shouting over the wind. For a minute it felt like real community, before the HOA turned neighbors into suspects. Then she appeared. Mara, standing on her porch steps, red robe soaked, hair plastered, clipboard trembling in her hand like a white flag. "Jack," she called, voice breaking. "I made a mistake." I looked up from the pump, rain streaming off my hat. "We all did. You warned us," she stammered. And I didn't listen. I walked up until I could see the fear in her eyes. "You built a dam to protect your perfect lawns and drowned my pasture to do it. You killed my calves, poisoned my soil, turned me into the villain because admitting you were wrong would crack that little kingdom of yours." She didn't argue, just nodded, rain mixing with tears. Then the wind shifted vicious. Someone screamed down the street. Mara's driveway, the one the HOA had improved with cheap fill years ago, started collapsing into the gully. Her luxury SUV teetered, then vanished into the hole with a sick splash. Mara froze, clutching the railing as the porch edge crumbled. Jonah grabbed rope. "She's going in." I didn't think. I ran. Ground slick, rain blinding, but somehow I reached her. As her foot slipped, I caught her wrist, bones fragile under my grip, and yanked with everything I had left. Jonah anchored me. We dragged her back onto solid wood. She collapsed against the wall, gasping, sobbing. Why did you help me?" I leaned against the railing, chest burning. "Because even when someone builds a dam against you, you don't let them drown. That's the difference between rules and decency, Mara." We stayed through the night, clearing drains, rerouting flow, doing what the HOA never bothered to do, protect people instead of appearances. By dawn, the storm broke. Gray light spilled over wreckage. Nobody died. For once, that was victory enough. A few days later, county trucks rolled in, FEMA tents popped up like mushrooms. The mayor called it catastrophic infrastructure failure. I called it karma with muddy boots. The HOA tried to fight, of course, they always do. But when the state investigation heated up, they had no defense. That leaked memo and group chat screenshots were the nails in their shiny coffin. Gross negligence, environmental violations, property damage, the works. When they called me to testify, I brought the same binder I'd built months earlier, maps, drone shots, every email, every photo, every timestamp. The county panel asked if I believed the HOA acted knowing the risks. I didn't hesitate. They knew. They laughed about it in private chats. They built anyway because rules are for the rest of us. The room went dead quiet. An environmental board member nodded slow. That's all we needed, Mr. Harlan. The story exploded across local news. Retired engineer warns HOA. Illegal dam bursts. Floods perfect suburb. It spread faster than the water ever did. My inbox filled with messages from farmers, homeowners, even city workers across the country who'd fought their own HOA wars. One guy from Florida wrote, "You didn't just save your pasture. You spoke for every neighbor silenced by clipboard tyrants." I wasn't chasing fame. What I felt was quieter, release. The silence on my land finally felt peaceful again, not ignored, but heard. Months dragged on. The state dissolved the entire HOA board. Mara resigned before they could fire her, slipped out of town one rainy night with no announcement, no goodbye. Rumors said she moved to her sisters in Oregon. Maybe. Or maybe she just wanted to disappear from the mess she'd engineered. The county reimbursed my damages and even passed a new ordinance named after Laura, the Laura Harlan Stormwater Safety Act, requiring public permits for any HOA construction and mandatory environmental reviews. When I heard that, I stepped outside, stared at the sky, and finally let the grief exhale. I rebuilt slow. Used the settlement to regrade the pasture, dredge the poisoned soil, plant native grasses that could handle wet seasons. Where the dam once stood, I planted a row of young sycamores, 6 stubborn saplings reaching for light. My daughter came home from college that spring, studying civil engineering just like her mom. We walked the field arm in arm. She looked at the green returning and smiled. "You did it, Dad." I shook my head. We did. And so did the land. A week later, a small handwritten envelope arrived. No return address. Inside was a single sheet. "Mr. Harlan, an apology can't undo what I did, but I want you to know I'm sorry. You were right. I was warned. I didn't listen. I hope this place becomes what it was meant to be, not a neighborhood of rules, but of care. You reminded us what stewardship really means. Take care of your land. I'll take care of mine. Mara." I read it twice, folded it, and slipped it into the back of the binder, not as evidence, but as a reminder that even arrogance can learn. Sometimes too late. Oakwood Ridge Heights no longer has an HOA. The city took over maintenance and set up a resident council that actually listens instead of legislating grass blades. They even placed a small stone marker at the old dam site. Here stood a wall built on silence. It was broken by truth and washed away by rain. Every now and then I walk down there at sunset. The air smells cleaner. Kids ride bikes where the mud once ruled. My dog runs free again. And when the wind moves through those sycamores, it sounds a little like water finally finding its way home. People still ask if I ever forgave Mara. Truth is, forgiveness isn't the word. The storm already did that work for me. Took down the walls, the lies, the noise, and left something honest behind. So yeah, maybe that's what this whole saga was really about. Not revenge, not even justice in the courtroom sense, but the simple truth that sooner or later the water always finds its way back to where it belongs. And now I'll ask you, if it were your boots standing in that flooded pasture, watching someone build a dam on your land knowing it would all end like this, would you have fought back? Or would you have let the storm do the talking? Drop your thoughts below. I'll be reading every one. Because in neighborhoods like ours, the real stories never stay buried. They just wait for the next rain to wash the lies away.